Hey, Jasen Rice with LotParty. Again, this show is designed to help you with your virtual lot. We all know what a LotParty is, stirring up that inventory outside to maybe get more exposure on our cars or clean up a mess. But what we do on this show is figure out ways to stir up our virtual lot and get our cars moving a little bit faster. But what we're going to do is take a little bit of a step back, and I'm going to talk around the turnaround time of getting a car online, photo, price, and descriptions. And the big focus there, I'm going to run 2 episodes. One, I'm going to talk to Dennis McGinn from Recon. He owns a software product that helps dealers turn this around. It isn't a sales pitch. It's just going to be a reality of, the importance of that turnaround time. And then the next episode, I'm going to bring in a service director who's actually in the back end of everything. He's actually going through the trenches of helping a dealer turn around and getting these cars online through service, photo, price, and description a lot faster. So with that, to get a good turn, and even if you have a great turn, but let's just say you turn your inventory 7 to 10 times a year, to make that go a little bit faster, it comes around the turnaround time a lot of times. Because if it takes you 10, 14, 21 days to get a car between trade-in or purchase through service, through recon, through body shop and paint and dents or whatever, detail photoed and get them online, what happens is a lot of used car managers, if it took 20 days to get it on lot ready, he's treating it like it's day one old, and he's having it priced a little bit too high in the market for a 21-day-old car, and it bleeds through. So even if you're 7 to 10 day turn, or if you're a guy that does have 15-day turn or 15 turns, average day in the 20s, you could be losing a lot of profit if your turnaround time takes more than 5 to 7 days, okay? And Dennis is going to go over the importance of that. But one of the best practices, I say, I had a dealer that does a great job in turnaround time, and his thing, he read Dale Pollock's Velocity book. I'm going to put some images up here. He's got 3 Velocity books from Dale Pollock. Those are huge books as a dealer to read, but he actually had everybody on his staff read that book. Then that way, between the porter to the parts guy to everybody's on the same page of how important it is and how much money a dealership is losing if they don't turn around those cars quick enough. One quick example, I'd say, if you went from 10-day turnaround time down to 7, you save those 3 days in your turnaround time on average in a month. If you times that by 12 months in a year, that's 36 extra days. Your cars are faster online. That's almost an extra month. You, instead of having a 12-month selling season, you actually almost basically would have 12 or 13 selling months. So if you sell 100 cars a month, that's almost an extra 100 cars in a year. And at whatever, 15, 18, $2,000 a copy, or plus back end, you're running over $2,000 plus. That's a lot of money. So by just cutting 3 days off your turnaround time can make a dealership hugely profitable. Doesn't matter if you're a 7 turn or a 15 turn. So without further ado, I'm going to go right into this interview with Dennis right after this. Thanks. All right, hey, Jasen Rice again here at the LotParty. What I've set up is a great interview. I've got Dennis McGinn here from Recon. I want to have him introduce himself, give him his background. But what I really want to do is take this segment and dig into the turn rate at dealerships. How fast can we get cars online? What's the benefits of cutting that down? And what's the industry standards, and maybe what's some of the best practices out there? So Dennis, again, thank you for joining me on the show. Can you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure.
When did you start in the car business?
Actually, way back when I was running some of the divisions at Hewlett-Packard. I'm a technology guy. I got into the auto industry really working with the manufacturers. I had a division that built the Ford Service Bay Diagnostic System, which was the first really integrated way that Ford could tap right into the cars online using HP's instrumentation and see what early failures were going on and so on. So I worked with both GM and Ford, and Fiat, Ferrari, a lot of those guys back about 15, 17 years ago. But I left HP in 1990 and started to run to some other companies and started some companies. But in the early 2000, about 2002 or 3, I had a dealer group approach me just because of my background, and they knew I knew at least the OEM side, and they asked me to help them develop some solutions for their retail operations. So that's kind of how I got into this, and And then in 2010, I started this company, Rapid Recon, to focus on just the time to market reconditioning issues that seem to be everywhere, and not being addressed by anybody except by people with spreadsheets, which really doesn't really work. I mean, the issue is accountability, and nobody wants to be accountable to somebody else's spreadsheet. So that's kind of the main hole in this whole thing. I also had some earlier experience. I had a company that I had built some electromechanical devices for locating cars and using RFID. And in that experience, I had some very good dealers that I work with who used to tell me what a sham it was, the reconditioning time that was reality was a sham. And so essentially the team preparing their GMs to go to a 20 group meeting would not give them the real information because they didn't want to send the GM off and be embarrassed. So they would basically tell them, oh, well, it's 2 or 3 days and we don't have any trouble. And so it became kind of self-fulfilling that they would discount the difficult cars and only think of the best case. And of course that makes no sense, except it was just a behavioral thing. But this particular dealer told me actually how that worked when they go around the room at a 20 group meeting and everybody talks about how they're doing, and they all basically would say the same thing. It was all just baloney. That's what got me interested in this.
Okay. And so, you know, I think we go back probably 10 plus years, and I know over the years, as you've grown this Rapid Recon, in the same time period, I was working with Viato, and I'm running the same things. I'm trying to help dealerships turn around that inventory, to turn that inventory quicker, you know, to get them into double digits on their turn, 10, 12, 15, 18 turns. But the biggest struggle that we ran into, and a lot of dealers that were at that border that may be at 10, 12 and doing great, but can't get to that 15 where you really start seeing the benefit of velocity, it came down to that turnaround time. And so, you know, more and more, the realistic number, I would guess, and I want you to educate us on that, is probably more around that 10 to 14 days. Is that what you're finding out there? Is that kind of the average?
It's they don't really know, and I guess I have the advantage of seeing real numbers, because as more dealers step out in front and say, wow, this is really a problem. I really had no idea how much gross I was throwing away in not being at 4 days, which is everybody's goal. They all want to be at 4 days or less. And for the most part, I've never seen anybody below 10 to start with. So, and some of them come, and even more so now, and they're being realistic, and they're saying, I'm at 16 or 20. They know it's terrible, and they're trying to figure out how to fix the problem. So, and we've even gone beyond this fixing the problem bit, because the real approach we take now is to make sure that their agenda is to have it as part of their culture, time to market as part of their culture. So it has to involve the GM and the DP, because it makes no sense to waste time and money on either parties to just kind of figure out it's in the body shop and then say we've solved our problem, because that never happens. It's always a changing playing field out there. The problems that you had last week and last month are going to be different going forward.
Well, you know, and that brings up a point about, you know, everybody being on the same page a little bit. You tipped on there, and at the beginning of this, you know, before our segment, you know, talk about, you know, Dale's book Velocity. He's got 3 books of velocity out there, and I know some of the dealers that are really successful at turning their inventory and having a great turnaround time on the recon part shared those books or at least those philosophies with everybody, because when you have a porter or a body shop or a paint guy that doesn't understand the importance of getting that expedited as quick, you know, you're missing the piece of the puzzle. So, you know, 2 things I want to dip into and have you answer is, one, a little bit about the software product, again, because what you're able to do is allow dealerships to track that timeline and have each person responsible. But then maybe touch in, how do you get each person, how do you get the body shop guy to understand and get the parts guy to understand and get that buy-in? I guess if you can.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because a lot of times they're gun shy because they've tried so many times with so many different spreadsheets or somebody else's whiteboard and all that, and they've never trusted it. So they're a bit skeptical, and in terms of how they're going to control what's being seen as their performance through a system. So it's been a bit of a challenge, especially when you have people in the early stages of when I started the company that are not, they're kind of anti-technology. They're not they're not embracing smartphones so much, but that has all changed. I mean, even the detailers now have smartphones. Everybody knows how to bookmark things on their phone and so on. So we've taken this thing to the point of everybody that's doing the work needs to be able to say, I'm done with my part. And that's a lot of mobile. It's setting it up right the first time. And you can kind of envision a room full of people all saying, well, I understand that we've got a couple of $100,000 at least that we're losing in gross between where we are and where we need to be. So the financial motivation's there. But then we step into the ring and show the people there in real time how they can be accountable for their own steps. So in our world now, every step has an owner, and a lot of them have backups as well. So for instance, the used car manager approval is a really critical one. And not every car needs to be approved because it may be under the threshold, but most of them do. And they need to be able to approve things right down to the item level. They need to be able to do that at the desk without flipping a screen. They need to be able to do it from their phone. So that kind of gives you an idea of where this goes. Well, the same thing applies to even some of the stores have the text right in the system, and they're saying, I'm done, or I'm working on the car. So what that does is, when those people say, hey, I really like this, I really like my being able to control my own accountability, then everybody else falls in line because it's all chained together. If you're not doing your part, somebody else is looking bad. So, but you have to set that up right the first time, and it starts with the GM, starts with the DP, GM saying, we're going to make this part of the culture, and then we're able to, in the first hour, have everybody on their phones being in control of their steps, knowing what's going on, and being able to say, okay, my bucket's right, my step is true, I've got the right cars in there, and that's good. And that's what everybody wants. And the other part of this, it's all kind of behavioral based. So we make a big point about being able to stay on top of these things and stay ahead of it is less work and certainly less emotional energy going down than all the stuff before, which had finger pointing and I don't know, and everybody needs to know where all their cars are all the time and why. I mean, that's the
you talked about behavioral, and I kind of laughed at it, the fact that a lot of it too, and not so much on the porter end and things like that, but a lot of it's going to be pay based. And sometimes, to me, the turnaround time all comes into the bottom line, the total gross of the dealership. So it's not gonna. Do we run into struggles of, hey, well, I'm not getting more money to work any harder or any faster. What's the benefit for me other than? And so sometimes behavioral on at work, regardless of what position, between porter, salespeople, whatever, it's what is it for me. So I don't know if, and maybe we could touch on this or restructure pay plans or anything like that, but to kind of get into the numbers, one, let's talk about that, and then two, dig into maybe some of those behavioral pay plan adjustments. Maybe is one of the things I tell dealers, and again, tell me I'm wrong, I want you to give me more detail, but if anything, I tell them, man, if you can cut 3 days off of your turnaround time, if you're at 10 and we get you to 7, that's 3 days a month that you're getting your cars faster online. You times that by 12 months in a year, that's 36 days in a year quicker that you're getting your cars online. it's almost like an extra month of selling. Instead of 12 months of the year, you got 13 now. So if you average 100 cars a month, that's 100 more cars at the end of the year. At $2,000 a copy, here's your number. But again, that's bottom line stuff. And sometimes the people that are helping you get there might not benefit from those because it goes in the bottom line. So is there any pushback or adjustments that dealers have to make for that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
any issues?
There are kind of several ways to come at this. If everybody's heard the efficiency pitch so many times that a lot of times they think you're just trying to get them to do more work for the same amount of money. Yeah. But across the country, a lot of people are being paid on our numbers because they really are. They're generated by the individuals doing the work, so it's kind of a full closed deal. And yeah, a lot of the dealers that have they started out at the 10 or 12 days, and they've said we really want to get down to 5 or 6 in the next step. They will adjust the pay plans for these people. So I have a lot of sharing of pay plans across the country between dealers, so that they put the cheese in the right place for the people. I think that's a great idea. I think it's fair. Sure. And so everybody would like to be at a quote best practices level, and we've been through so many hundreds of these that we've seen. There's so much evidence of how you get there and how you stay there, and so there's no real argument anymore about being able to kind of get to that level. We know how to do that. We know how to help the dealers do that. And the difference in money is huge. Every 2.5 days, if you went to 10 days down to 7.5 days, for a typical dealer, that's another turn. I mean, that's another turn, and that's a lot of money. You sure. Put the gross on top of that and say another turn. My gosh, that's 100 cars times $1,800 or what. So that. It's a really big deal, but when you smooth out these kinks in the communication process with people knowing what they own and where their stuff is, you really make them more efficient. You really do. But you have to show them. You have to show them that they need to be able to tell themselves, push their buttons on their phones and see things happen. And that. So it works. And I just set up a store here last week. I mean, we're setting new ones up almost every day now. And the GM, of course, wanted this to be part of the culture. That was what he wanted to do. This is a group we already had probably 6, 7, 8 systems in. And he was really enthusiastic, not very technical. He was a little nervous about the whole thing, how it was going to come together. But he designed his own system with his team. That's really important, that the steps are theirs. They own them.
Design the steps,
right,
okay.
From beginning to end. Yeah. And then we got everybody in the room, had everybody signed in with the mobile, had all the cars staged up to get ready to go. I think they had 130 cars in the kind of get-go step. And they started moving the cars into place, into the steps they owned right then and there. And so by the time the meeting was over, it was an hour kind of thing, the cars were mostly in the right place. So everybody had the idea. Everybody said, okay, I see how this works. I can do my part. And I see that all this stuff depends on me doing my part so everybody else can do their part. And I think that's the critical factor is the GM saying, we want this to be in it. We want this to be part of the fabric of what we do. And the individuals hearing that we can help them to do their part, and it has to be easier than what they have been doing before. It's got to be less of an issue with them, and we can prove that. So that's.
And that's what I was going to say. You might be giving them more work, or at least you want them more efficient or faster with their work. But if you've got tools that allow it to be easier, you might be able to do more work with less effort, or pretty much the same effort, worst case scenario, because of the organization of what's moving where. Yep. The moving parts are moving. Yeah. You grease the gears to get them moving a lot quicker.
Yeah, a big proof point of the operations that we've seen that have gone to doing things like getting all the photos up online before they even do the mechanical work on the car. I mean, they do an inspection, but then they get their digital lot up immediately, both initial and final pictures, bing, boom, and then they have a step where they dispatch the cars to the techs, and then underneath there are the 5 or 6 techs by name, and you can see each one of them has so many cars, and it moves all day around. And I got to tell you, that was actually the owner's idea, the first one we did. We're doing a lot of them now, but it has become, the techs really like it. And obviously, that's the most expensive part of the reconditioning process itself. I mean, they control 80% or maybe even a higher percentage of the cost of what they put in the car. So the two things that are probably the most significant are, again, pushing the button pushing. I'm done with my part, or I'm working on it, right down to the people that are doing the work as far as possible. Some dealers are not quite ready for that. Some of them are. And then the approval process, so making sure that the approver is able to get right into the system without having to go anywhere or flip a screen or anything like that, so he's not holding any of these people up.
All right, so we got a few minutes left here. So Dennis, give me an idea of, maybe that dealer is struggling a little bit off and on. It's been through 2 or 3 processes, maybe grinding it through with an Excel spreadsheet, thinks he's, 5 when he's really 10 or 12. What's that 1 or 2 tidbits of advice you can give that dealer to maybe get them to the next edge, other than, obviously signing up for your products or Rapid Recon, which would be, obviously easy, but what's some of those aha moments that you find when dealers, the light finally ticks on?
Sure. If a dealer wants to figure out if this actually works, there are plenty of people they can talk to that have gone down that path in their brands, in their geographies, that can show them or tell them exactly how they got from 10 days to 4 days. And so, first thing you need to do is to say to yourself, hey, this really is a big deal. It's not something that I can just do the way I did it before and do it with a spreadsheet. That just doesn't work. There's no accountability, and most of the dealer or the general manager can't say, okay, we're going to go from 10 to 7 and be able to dial that in and have everybody on board with that, so they're all connected together. And with a system, a workflow kind of system, you can do that, and we can help make sure that it comes down that way. So that would be my advice, which is if you're not sure, ask to talk to people that have done it before, and figure out how it would fit into your operation.
Now on your site, I know rapidrecon.com, I've been on there, and you have some kind of calculator there for them to kind of figure that out too, right? For if they need, hey, what's the bottom line on this? I know on your site, and there's an evaluation portion or something that they can go to. Is that right? What's that? I mean,
the bottom line is that a typical dealer, at least we thought this, but I'm finding out something else now, that a typical dealer of 100 cars in inventory, used cars, has $250,000 in gross sitting in between where they are and where they want to be. Now that's kind of a minimal number. We use holding costs based on NCM 20's number that they use, that they've developed over the years with all the dealers that they work with, so it's got a lot of credibility. And so that's kind of a minimum, but we've done a couple recently where the dealers have already gone into that system and calculated their own. One was a store in Colorado that was $600,000. Another was a Toyota store. They dialed theirs in. It was over $800,000. So it is the motivation is there financially, and it all gets back to the GM. GM wants to be the best in class kind of GM with best in class numbers. You really have to go down this path, and again, it makes everybody's life easier. So it's not just piling on to make everybody do more work. That isn't the point. That's not going to work. It's got to be easier for everybody, and they have to say this. Hey, this really feels good, And again, we've got lots of examples of where that's come down.
Now, I would consider that the front end of running the operations of used cars, getting that turnaround down, and you're an expert at that. I deal with the back end of it. Okay, once we got a photo descriptions, let's get it online, where we need to price it, where we need to move it, and I work a lot with dealers there and getting them to double-digit numbers. But their growth, I can have a dealer have a 12, 15 turn, but their gross is still suffering because they just have an strict age policy, and they dump everything at day 45. Or day 60, start moving them by then. And but what they missed was those first 2 weeks because it took so long to get them online. So even though if a dealer does have a great turn and don't think it's an issue because they turn their inventory good and they're making decent gross, if they don't really know where this is, they're missing a lot of extra dollars in their inventory, because this will always be where it's at. I mean, if I'm at a 60 and I'm always turning, I'm going to go through fluctuations in seasons and I might dip here and there. But if I'm always having this policy and procedure, how else do I get more profit margins? The only other way to do it then is expenses, your advertising, this and that, and or what they have more control of, and it's that front end, what you're talking about, that turnaround time. And that's just crucial. So I appreciate your time. Go ahead.
No, all that's very true. I mean, I have not run into. Some people ask me, well, if I'm a really small dealer, do I really need this? And we put this in dealerships that are stocking 40 or 50 cars, and in order to really control the ups and downs and the turns, as you say, you need this. Yeah. It's not really optional in the ability to control your future. So that's
sure. I am both in mine and in your aspects. My front end of it, and your back end of it, or your front end of it doing the turnaround time, and I'm talking about the marketing stuff. I think the smaller dealer needs it more because one or two mistakes in that inventory and that turnaround time in our marketing can cost a whole month for a small.
Good point. Yes, very true.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, I appreciate your time. Again, this is one of those topics that I don't know how much in the industry, there's talks about it, but I don't think we really dig into it. So I love getting your perspective, digging into this. Now, guys, next week I'm going to interview a service director where he's actually doing the work, and we're going to go through those struggles and what does it actually take to accomplish it at the dealership level. So we're not just going to talk to a sales manager who puts pressure on his guys to get a turnaround time. We're actually going to talk to a service manager, the service director there, and what all it takes are these puzzles to put it together to get to that next level, because I think it's such a huge important topic. Dennis, again, thanks, and congratulations on your success with Rapid Recon, and we'll talk soon.
Great, Jason. Thank you. I appreciate your asking me to spend a few minutes with this topic. It is, in fact, my favorite topic, so thank you for the opportunity.
Cool. Hey, that was a great interview with Dennis. Thanks for watching LotParty's show. Next week, again, we're going to interview a service director that's actually in the trenches and get his intake of what it really takes to turn around that inventory a lot quicker. And we're also going to end this show with a little quick tip for you for your used car inventory. Thanks.